Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we're going to be talking about our frequency, that energy wave, the little spark inside of us, the light that we radiate, perhaps also, too, the energy in which we engage with, the chaos, the seeming, the discordance kind of out there, as we say, the spirals on the earth. We feel like it's a tornado, it's a hurricane, perhaps it's an earthquake. All of these different energies are now really coming into our forefront. Our ideas, our thoughts, we're encountering them on social media. People are starting to talk about them. And we're saying, what is this all about? The idea is, in the year 2025, we are now at the point of observance. We are noticing energy, shifts, changes, how it's perceived, what it feels like, and what it looks like, and what is it all about. That's what we'll be talking about today with Penney Peirce. Her book is Frequency, the Power of Personal Vibration. Penny, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
So glad to have you, Penny. Don't you think the year 2025, people are starting to say, what the heck is going on? And without putting almost like a validation or another story on it, they're saying, I want to know something different than what's going on, perhaps?
I think many are, yeah. I think it's kind of a year of a major turning point. Like a lot of things have surfaced from the subconscious mind, and people are either polarizing and retracting and going into a kind of a self-protective mode, or they're really welcoming the new energy and, developing very quickly into higher consciousness. So it's happening fast. It started last year a lot, but this year I think it's going to be much, much more intense.
I think it's faster because the concepts of people, what they're willing to accept anymore, people are saying, I'm not willing to accept the standard dogma. I'm not willing to accept old books. I'm not willing to accept old ideas that don't fit within my realm of thought. So as our thought expands, some of these old things come up to be challenged. Don't you think perhaps that's really happening in the collective now?
Oh, yeah. And I think that part of the energy that I keep feeling, there's an acceleration that's been going on for years and years, and I feel like we're still having these sort of energy waves that are coming into the earth and causing things to move faster, which means an acceleration of our own body to vibrate at a higher level. And then, of course, our emotions catch up, and then the thoughts catch up, and really we're starting to almost have a sense of spirit in matter, of understanding that the non-physical realm is right here with us, and in it is our high levels of energy and consciousness. And as the body adapts to that, I think we are having revelations. And some people don't know what is happening to them, so they get unconsciously kind of scared or anxious, and then they contract. And for some people, that means getting really, really frustrated and angry, and in extremes, even violent. Other people just want to hide, and they get apathetic, and it's like a turtle, pull into your shell, or find a bunch of other people who agree with that point of view, and then get together and form a huge group of that. Safety in numbers. And then on the other hand, there are a lot of people that are opening up, and they're not really contracting at all. they're just welcoming and opening and becoming more fluid and open, and their consciousness is accelerating into very high levels. All kinds of new things are happening consciousness-wise now.
Penny, let's take it back to the beginning, and we talk about what does the word frequency actually mean. Many people will say, I don't even know what energy is all about. What are you even talking about? Because they've kind of have been stuck into the material world, the density, the collection of things to create their story, their legacy. This is my job. This is my house. This is my ownership. These are my kids, this is my body, this is my disease, that kind of type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that for anyone to say, we're supposed to be living in a different aspect, a different observation, I think the idea is that you probably have been all along, you may not have noticed it, and just didn't have the correct influence or words to be able to relate it. In other words, a lot of times people will say, I went into a party and, it just felt weird and we left. Well, you picked up energy, people. Or, oh, my gosh, I just didn't feel right, and I turned left. Oh, I'm glad I missed that wreck on the road before. Mm-hmm. Or, I really didn't feel like eating that food, and then everybody else got sick at the party. So we do have this innate inside of us. The idea is it's not something we have to sell our soul, go find a guru, or go find a book that's going to tell us, quote, how to do it all the time. It's about being able to say, what can we turn on and recognize within ourselves, perhaps?
Yeah. I think it's becoming more evident that that everything vibrates, first of all, that we're starting to understand that there are, like, high-frequency emotions and low-frequency emotions. It would be like, depression and guilt and negativity and envy, and those things are pretty low-frequency because they create negative results. And high-frequency emotions might be joy and compassion, and they're really, I think when you get high-frequency emotions, they turn into not really emotion anymore, but more like states of being that are much more, in a way, neutral. They're not so jazzy and jumpy and,
Right.
But so that's, like, you gave some great examples, and I think that we understand that, like, if you put your kids in school, there are certain schools that aren't doing a very good job exciting your children to learn more, and others that are creative and opening and alive. You can feel the difference in that sense of aliveness in things, that sense of color and openness and energy. Because we know how to feel energy. We do know what it feels like. Some people have a lot of high frequency, but what I call it, sort of aberrant or jagged energy, like ADD. Or something. And other people have high frequency, sort of like, the Dalai Lama or somebody who's really calm and very clear. And when you get around them, you feel like you're not being judged at all, like you feel safe and good. Those are energy states. But the interesting thing is that levels of consciousness go along with the energy state. Consciousness and energy is connected. So when you raise your frequency up to a higher, more refined kind of level, your emotions and your mind and your thoughts change to parallel that. And so we're seeing more people who are becoming healers and counselors and so forth. People are opening up and realizing they want to do more service and help others.
I think a lot of times we look at our energy and our vibration. We say that's our emotions and our thoughts and the way in which we feel and expand in the world. Those are all concepts. Those are all ideas and thoughts and how we respond to it. I think sometimes we say, someone said something and, man, it is like you're really pushing my buttons. Or someone said to me the other day, they said, man, you really had to do that, didn't you? And I'm going, huh? Or it turned around and they said, some people will say someone is doing something to them, and I'm going, it almost as if it doesn't resonate with your thoughts. And so when you get into these different expanded levels of consciousness and energy, those senses of that other energy, the words and the stories, and also, too, the way in which they respond, almost seems as if it's very, as I used the word before, discordant, because you notice you're going, it almost as if it's screeching your bike to a halt, so to speak. You're going, what was that? But we recognize it. So I think the idea is real important, Penny, is that in this world, on this world, the earth has quakes and hurricanes and storms, and in it, you have the people and their energies. It's always an up and down. The idea is that it is always there. We're not in the state where everything is in Zen. People think that there's going to be this place where we're going to be, we're all going to be singing Kumbaya, and we're all going to be wearing white sheets, And they try to get themselves to that place, but then they still have to go buy groceries at Walmart, or they still have to pick up their kids from a game that they lost. So while we can understand there is a lot of this there, it's a bit more about our response to it and engagement in it. Correct?
Yeah. That's a lot you put into that.
I know.
There. I think that, let me see, how do I answer this? I think that partly this acceleration is causing a lot of people to open up and to become very clear, and a lot of other people, like I said before, to contract. So when we say something that's coming from a place of clarity that doesn't match their beliefs in what's safe, what's real, what's regular, then they say things like that to you, like, why'd you do that? Or, that kind of thing, because it threatens the beliefs that they hold. It's not in alignment with what they have decided keeps them safe and comfortable. But as you learn to open up and grow and expand, you start to receive anything with an open mind. And this goes to your point of how we receive things, is that it's not good or bad. You don't need to be judgmental about it. I think everything you notice is evolutionary. Everything that happens is evolutionary. The snags with your computer and making phone calls to straighten out some problem constantly with things that have gone wrong, minuscule things. It's very frustrating, and then I will catch myself and go, wait, this is life. This is me living and noticing that I get frustrated. Why don't I turn this into something enjoyable? There's another person somewhere on the other end of this that I could have an interesting time with or something. I turn it into something positive. So there's a choice to be made, whether you allow something to assist you and aid you and further you, and what you offer to others is to further them and help them, or take it as an insult or take it as a threat. And then what good does that do to anybody?
Right. Right.
So I think part of the process that a lot of us are in, and hopefully other people are really waking up to, is this fundamental choice about how do we see things, and do we give up blame? That's a biggie right now, is do I blame myself for something that happened or blame somebody else for something that happened, or is there an insight here that about a more proper way to do something that's in alignment with spirit or with the higher universal principles,
I find myself sometimes, just as you shared about yourself, getting frustrated with something. I would make a call and it'd be like, oh my gosh, this is the fifth person I'm being transferred to, and it's just not getting done. And what I would say to each person along the call, please do not take this personally. This has zero to do with you. It has to do with the process of the computer or the product. And all of a sudden you could feel yourself just, okay. Your shoulders will drop down. You're not so much in defense mode. You're understanding, how can we just move from A to B, so to speak? And I think that a lot of times we put a lot of our vested interest and energy into someone or something else, and then we expect it to respond as such. We could think about relationships for a minute. I married them, and this is what we thought we were going to do, but you never had that conversation, or maybe you all have changed along the way, or maybe the world has changed, or, hey, maybe you can't buy a loaf of bread and milk for under $1 anymore, so obviously everything has changed, And I think the idea is that many people have said that, but I'm not supposed to have to change. I think that's a biggie right now. I think that's a biggie, don't you think? Yeah.
Yes.
Because now people are definitely saying, but I can't change. And, I liken it to myself here in New Orleans. Every time we have a really devastating hurricane that I've been through, I'm like, well, what did we lose this time? And I'll say, it's just stuff to push out. And I'm going, awesome, and then on to the next. Yet you will speak to some people, and they will have a home with all their stuff in it, and they've given the energy of their life to their material goods. Do you see? So we think about
security.
Where is our sense of safety? Where is our sense of identity? And how can we see that there's conflict right there, perhaps?
Mm-hmm. I guess, the two choices, back to that again, is that when we've defined ourselves and gotten our sense of identity, and it's always, in the beginning, it's about, I have this kind of lineage, this body, I'm a girl or a boy, I do this for a living, and all the physical things, then that almost like precludes you from understanding that there's a whole other, not just half, but maybe, I always think we're kind of like reverse icebergs. Most of us is above the line, and just a little bit of our personality self is here. And but that we are trying to bring ourselves into a remembrance of the fact that we are souls, that we are from the spiritual, non-physical realm, that we are consciousness, basically, and energy before we become 3D. And so when you define yourself early in life as three-dimensional, and the left brain loves to just, define that and keep it that way, doesn't want change, because then you'd have to change all your ideas. And once you get used to something, you think it's safe. So why do I have to change? Because you don't know what would come in then. Like it could be really dangerous. That's where you don't realize you have a choice about how you like to hold things, how you like to see things, because your point of view really changes whether you're safe or unsafe. So a lot of this is about perception, in my opinion. And opening perception to understand more and more of the invisible dynamics of energy and consciousness and the spiritual realm.
It's so interesting, Penny. I just had a total vision when you were talking. And it was, being that I live here in New Orleans, it was like we were trudging through the swamp, and it was still kind of dark outside. And then all of a sudden, as you get to the edge of the swamp, the lake is here with the swamp and the lake. As soon as you get to the edge of the swamp into the lake, all of the ducks start to fly away. And I'm going, isn't that the total idea, is that once you come out of this dark space that you're in, or this place where you feel so heavy and weighted down, you then just try to fly, and there's so much more potential out there to you. And it no longer has to be a story. It can just be. And I think so many times people, I will share on the radio, or they will talk to me about it, and I'll say, but I just don't see any of that, I just see everything. You know, like, it's the funniest thing. It's just as simple a story as I will go to the grocery store at Christmas time, and I really wanted to make Christmas cookies. I hadn't done it for a long time, and one year I made like 20 different kinds and put them all in boxes and gave them away to people. And I said, let's go get everything. So I walked around the store, and I was singing, you know, the Christmas songs to myself that were on the radio in the store, and I was feeling good, and it was kind of cold outside, and it was put myself right into that story. Well, I got to one aisle, and all of a sudden, something clicked inside of me. I picked up my hands off of the basket that was full, and I walked out of the store. And I went home. And all of a sudden, they said, where's all the stuff? I said, well, I already had that attachment and that feeling to that story. I already walked through making all the cookies. I thought about all the memories. I really deeply ingrained in myself in that experience that I wanted to have, and I didn't need it anymore. Mm-hmm. And they went, huh? You know, and to me it's very common. I've been doing this forever, you know, decades. Mm-hmm. But I think that's truly where we are coming to in the place as we have this expanded energy, don't you think?
Very much, because I've noticed that feelings of old trigger points and old karma, if you will, that I've had, I don't seem to have it. It's like it dropped away. And I think that what happens is that our consciousness has gone to a level where we've eclipsed the old misunderstanding or error in perception we made in order to form the karma in the first place. Right. And gotten the understanding, so we don't need it as a reminder anymore because we're already doing it the right way now. And so a lot of that's just gone. And a lot of it's almost like the space around us, or at least for me, in the field around me, feels very clear. Whereas before it felt kind of cluttered, like there was a lot of like stuff floating in the air around me, you know, like ideas and people and incomplete things, and so now it just feels like the air is open, the space is open, and it's so much easier to expand and move and encompass more of reality and so forth. Yeah,
you know, it's. As you said that, I thought of the word space junk. There's been many times where I've said, I truly feel I exist way more in the higher space, and I barely put my toe into a human vehicle or story or whatever you want to call it. And I would say, man, there's so much space junk up here these days, you know, and it's the things you bump into. And I think as people start to arise, everything starts to come up around you, too. In other words, if you start to feel differently or want to change, you're going to run into space junk, material densities, chaos, or something that's spiraling with a different frequency around you. I always liken it to the story. There's a few women, and they used to always go to lunch, and they'd have a few drinks, and they'd sit there for the afternoon, you know, and kind of meander and complain or talk about their stories or whatever. All of a sudden, one of them will decide, I'm not going to drink anymore. And then she would still keep going to all of those, you know, luncheons and everything. And all of a sudden, people would start to say, you know, why? And they'd start to get annoyed with her and everything. And then one day, she's not invited anymore, because she's not in the same realm or the same specificity as the other people. And she is, in other words, towing her own line, so to speak. I think we see this in almost every engagement we've been in, if we really pay attention. And we have the choice to say, oh, man, that is so awesome. That is so awesome. That's really reflecting and showing me that I am where I wish to be, versus saying, oh, my gosh, I guess I really have to maybe... I'll just order one drink and look at it the whole time, you know, at lunch or whatever.
Yeah. You
know, idea, perhaps.
I think that someone who does that and can be comfortable with other people drinking, for instance, just to keep your metaphor going, it can give the other people the idea that, look how comfortable she is. She doesn't feel, you know, if it were me, I would feel nervous or anxious or something, So it could work in a way where it helps others understand how to be a new way. But most people, we're going back to the old thing of the contraction about this is our way, we do this, and maybe we kind of know that it's not the best way to be, but we're going to do it anyway, and anybody who doesn't agree with it, we can't have them around because that challenges our belief. And that's what's happening today. I think the frequency on the earth has increased so much that everything that's been stored in our subconscious mind that we don't pay attention to, that we don't want to look at, and individually that's certain beliefs and, things that we think are unsafe or we shouldn't or should do, all the shoulds. Those things are surfacing now. They're popping up out of the subconscious mind because even the subconscious has gained in frequency, and the old fear beliefs can't stay there anymore. So they come up to the surface, which is the conscious mind, daily life, or, if it's collective, it's current events. And we are swimming around in this murky sea, kind of like you said, of not just your own stuff showing up, but then everybody else's as well.
Space junk.
Yeah, that's the space junk, and bumping into all this stuff, and then maybe getting triggered to backslide into an old way that you used to be, but then you catch yourself and go, wait a minute, no, I'm not doing that anymore. But it's a constant practice, I guess, right now would be the word, to recenter yourself, remember your own choices, remember how you want to be, let people be themselves, don't judge and don't blame. And set a good example as much as you can. And if you backslide, notice that you did it and then come back to center. It's normal, when you're trying to break habits. And so I think a lot of us are going through that. But when I look at politics or just in this country and around the world, it looks like the collective subconscious mind is opening everywhere. And so this collective idea of control and need for everything to be like the way we are. You don't want things to be different. We don't want that threat of the person who doesn't drink at lunch. Those things have polarized countries now, and people have gotten very contracted into those defensive postures, let's say. Meanwhile, other people have opened and are trying not to be polarized with that and not to be opposite of that, but to be open and allowing. So they're reducing polarization by not doing that. I think that when I speak with more of people who've been on a spiritual path or who've been opening into higher consciousness, they're not polarizing anymore. They're not blaming anymore. They're not going into fear because some other group has polarized and could hurt them. They don't hold that in their mind.
Is that not also to the idea of the outside and the inside, of separation of you and me, of the separation of light and dark? That's the whole idea of it, is by even saying, I am this guru, this person, this, you kind of have pushed yourself on this left to right paradigm, either left to right. So we're still swimming on this left to right paradigm as a human existence. For myself, I noticed I'm above it. And I notice that those things happen, and I can feel myself drifting towards them, and I'll pull myself back. But I think the idea is that there are many who are in this world right now who don't see that separation. I don't see the separation. I don't. I live in New Orleans. There could be a big mansion on the corner. There could be a little shack next door. There could be someone who is just living on the ground on the corner. We don't have that separation. This is different, a very different kind of consciousness, so to speak. I've never seen the difference between someone who is important and myself or anyone else. I don't have that. I don't even know what that means, so to speak. Or I've had people on this show who have been extremely important, and I'm like, oh, okay, hi. That other stuff means nothing, and it doesn't even show up in my place. So I think the idea is that there's a great range from where we used to be in the early 1900s to where we conceptually wish to be in our thoughts and our minds. The difference is your book, Truly Frequency, is all about the bridge. How do you walk along the bridge? How do you find tools to gather your information along the way? And what will each step on the bridge look like? Perhaps?
Okay, again, you've put a lot of stuff into what you said. Mm-hmm. First of all, I think that people who are working with becoming more spiritually evolved have a tendency to stop having ego. There are some that say, I'm great, I'm a guru, you know, and still have that, and that's part of their identity. And there are others who are, like, letting go of identity. I know I am. I've had a whole bunch of things that have let go of that, the story, my narrative. I mean, I have it, I can use it, but that's, you know, I've had some pretty strong experiences where I am not that. I am like a white hole with stuff coming out of it, you know. It's like, and just in the moment. So there's no polarization. There's no I'm above it or below it or anything like that. I'm just with it all. And I think as the more your frequency increases, the more you come into that kind of consciousness and are aware of everything connected to everything else, everything being, you know, inside everything else, really. You know, I have all those other people in me. I've done it. I've been there. I am it, you know, and I can watch it now. It's in me. I don't put it outside of me. But I think your original point about separation is that we have this sense of perception when we embody that here I am, I'm inside my body looking out through these eyes, and there's a big outside world out there, and it's so huge, and it's dangerous, and how do I, you know, fight it? How do I survive in it? How do I stay safe in it? How do I control it so that I'll stay safe? And that is the big problem, you know, that we all have incarnating here. So as you increase your spiritual knowing, you start to realize that the spiritual realm is inside the physical realm. It's all one thing. And as you shift into working with spiritual principles, there is no outside world anymore. It all becomes you. And you can affect it with your thought. And you can bless it, you can heal it, you can stay separate and create a world that is inimical to each other, you know. So I think then getting to the point about frequency in my book is that, yes, this is trying to help people understand what I call frequency dynamics. Like, if you are a vibrating human being and the world is all vibrating at different frequencies, how do we find resonance? How do we deal with dissonance? You know, and now especially, I just, in this new 15-year anniversary edition that's just come out, I've added a whole new chapter at the end and 120 more pages about some of the things that are happening now that the frequency on the planet has increased so much. There are kind of new revelations coming in, new gifts, new ways of perceiving. And it's, to me, it's incredibly exciting. And yet it still remains, I think, that people who are trying to help others to open up and wake up more, it's still a lot of work. It's still, you know, we still want to keep going and keep helping others to open up and wake up so that they can have this perspective too. And it's not better than or worse than. It's something that's much more peaceful and creative and compassionate, and it's a kind of consciousness that just works, and it makes things easier. I don't know if you have felt that too, but that's my personal orientation.
Yeah, it's sometimes you can just step into a place, and I don't even have an answer for it. You just kind of you're there, you know what I mean? And you don't become tethered to all of the energy swirls, so to speak. Mm-hmm. In other words, you could see them and feel them. It's
you
almost
don't
as
go down the drain with them.
Right. You don't get sucked in. You kind of live in the mirage, so to speak, or a kaleidoscope, one of those little things that you turn with all the colors. Mm-hmm. You kind of live in that space and time, but you're okay with that, you know? Yes. And it's a good place to be. And, you know, I think about it, in closing, we'll touch on this topic about our body. I can distinctly remember it was Hurricane Katrina, and I was had ended up in the ER because I had a blood clot on my leg, and the lady was doing the test, and I had been there for like hours because they were evacuating, and the long story, and I said to her, "Oh, you're not going to find it now. It just moved." And she says, "What are you talking about?" I said, "It just moved. I just felt it move. I know where it is." And they could not understand that. They were in such a state of chaos. It was like, "See you later. We don't know. You can stay in the hospital, or you go on lockdown, or you go home." And I went home, and yes, and it moved its way all through my body while Katrina was happening. And I'm going, this is really weird, because it was the energy force that I was moving of the storm. It was also too moving within me. And it was so, there aren't words to describe it, but it definitely, when you are into connection with something in your body, and you know it and you can feel it deep in your soul, like when you say, "Oh man, I just don't feel right," and you keep going to the doctors and they don't understand you, or they can't find you, or they can't put your finger on it, or whatever, you know, then you need to take another thing and say, "Oops, what's going on around me?" And have like two kind of books when you go to the doctor. This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm telling them. This is what I think. This is what they think, so to speak. And then once you look at those, you go, "Oh, wow, that's interesting." Mm-hmm. So I've chosen the doctor to be able to give me answers. He'll be my safety net, so to speak, if something really crashes and burns. But I think I'm going to go dance over here. And don't you think that's where a lot of people are right now about their body? They're saying, you know, "I'm not going to the doctor anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. Or I need to find a different one. Or I don't really know how to tune into my body." And it's like, whoa, hang on a second and see what the story is, right?
Exactly. And, you know, I had the same kind of thing back years ago when I lived in California and Mount St. Helens blew. The day or so before that, I was uncharacteristically frustrated and short with people. You know, like I was kind of blowing up almost. You know?
Oh, you were PO'd.
The volcano, you know, was happening. Anyway, no, I think you're right about that, or at least people are on the edge of this, of saying, "I'm dissatisfied with the medical system right now because they're not giving very good answers." And I had my own problem with that about a year ago with it. And the doctor is just giving science and statistics and the protocol where I'm feeling, but what is this? What's going on? Can you give me details of what it looks like inside so I can track it? And I kind of had a feeling that I could heal without having to go through, you know, getting something implanted in me or something, you know, and, you know, and they were like, "Well, if that's what you think," but and it did work out that way that I could, but there's doubt about, I think, the institutions right now, because they have become so impersonal, anti-personal. And I think that's part of what the disturbance in the world is all about, is that the way we are as people, we're starting to understand that we're souls, that a lot of the idealism that we had originally, like with the forming of this country, freedom for everyone, and that was based on soul consciousness, not just the survival of the fittest or something, And I think a lot of people are going back to that and saying these systems need to be redesigned, or we need to upgrade the way we are with each other in the world.
Right. Don't you think that also, too, a lot of the systems are vested in money? And I think right now, we don't talk politics on the show, but what we're really seeing is that a lot of the powers that be are shape-shifting money. And I think that's probably the most awesomest thing, because once the energy around money of where it has been rooted in its old train tracks, so to speak, and the way in which it was going or not going or whatever it was, and once it starts to dissolve and dissipate in those old stories, you'll start seeing freedom around other things. In other words, people will feel differently or sense differently, or things will start growing, or maybe the things that we thought that were going to become extinct show up again, or whatever it might be. In other words, if you could truly see that everything in existence is really energy, you say, oh, that's awesome. Let that happen. Let that fall. Let that break. Let that turn around. Let that grow. Let it blossom. Leave all the weeds out there. Let's see what happens. And let it all transform and transfigure within its own time cycle. I think that's truly what we're looking for, perhaps?
Yes, I think so. And it's funny you brought that up, because, I'm working on a new book now on money and transformation, and how it's the power of it to transform our consciousness, that it actually can do that. So I totally agree with you.
It's freed up energy. You know what I mean?
Yes, it is. And consciousness.
If it holds on to energy, I mean, when someone hands you money, it's like, ooh, that feels good. I'm going to go spend it. That's energy, And if you take that energy and dissipate it in other ways, it's different. You and I are old enough, wasn't it nice to always have change and money in your pocket? I always liken it to the story that, when you used to do the laundry and in the washer and dryer, you'd be picking out money all the time. And I'd go, oh, they're paying me for doing the laundry. Look at what I found. It's now mine, and now that we're into these credit card things, it's like I never find money in the washing machine or the dryer anymore, So it's all about that energy, perhaps.
I think so. I think that the value systems around money and the consciousness of money itself, not just our consciousness toward it, but that it is conscious also, are things that we're starting to understand and work with it in a way. But, having, the only time I have the change is like having to put the quarter in the cart at the Aldi supermarket here in Florida, and then people are generous. Here, take my cart. I don't need the change back. You keep it, and it's like pay it forward. Well, they gave it to me, so here you have it after me, instead of being cheap enough to have to go put the thing back and get your quarter back, It's a funny little vignette, that talks about how we feel about our money.
It's very interesting, because it frees up energy. I've had enough of those expanded physics classes to tell you, that you've got to put it somewhere, but if it can fly free, I always say let a feather be the wind beneath your feathers or whatever, let it be freer, and it's so much easier. Well, Penny, it was such a pleasure to have you speak with us today. I think many times people will say, I don't know what I'm knowing or feeling or sensing, and perhaps maybe today we've shared that and touched on a few stories, yes?
Yeah, I think it's been very productive. And, my first book, The Intuitive Way, really helps with that. It's a course on intuition development that helps people understand much more about reading their body and stuff like that, if anybody's interested in that one. It's still in print and very current. But I appreciate all your conversational items that you brought up. Very interesting.
Very good. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That would be great.
Yeah, well, of course, the books, and I do private sessions, and I also do I do a lot of talks and interviews, but I also do courses, online courses. I think as soon as I finish this book, I'm going to go back and start some new ones. But right now I'm just writing a lot. I also have started to write on Substack, which it's called Becoming Transparent. And so I do shorter pieces on there that is a free subscription. So,
very good.
Yeah.
Well, it was such a pleasure to have you with us today. We thank you so much for sharing and bringing some ideas into the forefront so others will be able to check into your books, and we'll post that on the bottom of today's show page.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more information about Penney Peirce, again, her book is Frequency, The Power of Personal Vibration. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page for more information and go directly to her page. And it is about being able to say, what am I feeling? What am I sensing? Ask others. Have the conversations and say, I don't know where this came from, but I just had this feeling the other day, and boy, what do you think about it? Have you felt something like that? And then the conversations will start. Become the seed, and you'll be able to blossom forth. I really, truly believe that the year 2025, it's really about everybody becoming more asking questions, kind of shaking the trees, so to speak, seeing what falls, and kind of leaving it there and saying, that's great. It's time to really get out there and see how much we can change in the world. It's all about change and how exciting it might be. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettgallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.